Okay, so the Nick Breeze just posted a interview with uh, Genevieve Walker, who works for the real estate industry as a building codes consultant, and she argues that they're ignoring the um, the true costs of abrupt global warming in the building codes. Here's a link for her talk. So she says that we're actually at SSP 5, which is the most extreme um, global warming estimate for increase in warming, and um, let's see. So basically, the shutdown of AMOC is not included in the shared socioeconomic pathway climate models. Um, so that's her main argument, is that actually the shutdown of AMOC could happen by 2050, which is less than the year 2000 compared to um, current time. So 2050 is really not that far away. But in fact, it's much worse than just the AMOC shutdown, because AI is not including the Natalia Shakova research on the East Siberian Arctic shelf. So I was debating this with my neighbor who relies on AI for everything, and so it's good because he plugs in my replies to him back into AI. So hopefully that will improve the AI modeling. But basically, if you go into AI, they still say the scientific consensus says that the probability of an abrupt methane release from the Arctic is low. And so the reason AI is incorrectly claiming that is because the United States Geological Survey is relying on just basically bad science. And this has been exposed by Natalia Shakova's research. They've detailed how these previous studies were wrong, and we're making like really weird claims that somehow the um, frozen methane doesn't well, it releases more. The frozen permafrost somehow releases more methane. I don't know. They had like just bizarre analysis. Um, so you gotta realize, well, why would they do that? Why would the Geological Survey like do bad science? And the the only thing I could think of is that they're in bed with the methane industry, which makes sense because you have a huge methane industry in the U.S. And it's just a proven fact that the government agencies are controlled by the big corporations. So it makes sense that scientists working for the US Geological Survey would be biased towards the methane industry, which basically would say, oh, it's not, methane's not a problem because methane is green, whatever they want. But okay, so when you look at the research of Natalia Shakova, they basically point out that the so-called scientific consensus is claiming that the methane in the Arctic is just being created by methane eating, or by biogenic methane, which basically means that the melting of the permafrost will then cause the bacteria to increase, and those bacteria will then release methane. But that's not what's happening. You have a huge pressurized stored methane source that's accumulated over 3 million years. and it's never been released from the previous cycles of the ice ages. And so, because the East Siberian Arctic Shelf is the world's largest Arctic shelf, and 80% of the Arctic shelf is less than 150 feet or less than 50 meters in depth, that means that this pressurized methane will release as bubbles into the atmosphere. And the science is well proven that in order for the bacteria to eat the methane, the methane has to be dissolved in the water. And the only way it's dissolved in the water is if it's being created by the other bacteria as the permafrost heats up. But that's exactly what's not happening, because the whole point of Natalia Shakova's research group is that this isn't methane being newly created from the melting of the permafrost, but it's methane that was preformed and has been there for millions of years. And there's like 1,200 gigatons of methane, and it's at least 800 gigatons that they've proven. And there's also tolics that are melted, basically shafts into the deep methane from like seismic faults that were already there before the Holocene period began. So those are the triggers. And what's happening is, as the shelf is, the permafrost is melting from the shallower coastal line to the deeper, like it's not that deep though, since it's only 150 feet for 80% of the East Siberian Arctic Shelf, also called ESAS. So this is completely covered up by the so-called scientific consensus on global warming, which is basically just like, if you can get more papers published, then you're the scientific consensus, and so even though Natalia Shakova's research group has been published in like the top science journals, especially like Nature, there's been a lot of other like really bad research that has tried to sort of like confuse the issue. And so that's why AAI is wrong about the, not just AMOC, but also the Arctic methane abrupt eruption. And so now we have, like, it's a well proven fact that the Arctic ice is at all-time record lows. At the Arctic temperature in the water is all-time records high. And what's happening is that as you have less ice and you have increased storms, because obviously, if you have open water, then you have storm, the water is susceptible to wind, and that causes a mixing of the warm water down deeper down, and that's what then triggers the melting of the permafrost and the subsea permafrost. So they've been studying this in Natalia Shakova since like 2009 for sure is where I've seen the research go back to 2009. And then at 2015 is when they came out and said like this is a serious threat. And then the cover up began by the U.S. Geological Survey saying, oh no, they like completely obfuscated the issue. Okay, so now we have two factors. We have AMOC, which everybody knows about AMOC because it's been on the internet a lot. It's been discussed by the New Scientist, whatever. People like to discuss the shutdown of the AMOC because it's kind of a catchy acronym, maybe. But the abrupt eruption of methane is possible to happen within 10 years. But then you also have the aerosol masking effect, which is much worse than, even though that's included in the SSP modeling, it ignores Daniel Rosenfeld's research. The Daniel Rosenfeld research group has proven that the aerosol masking effect is much worse than the mainstream models consider. So I did the calculations based on Daniel Rosenfeld's research on aerosol masking effect and calculated that a 40% decrease in burning coal will heat up Earth another 1 degree Celsius global average. So basically what that means is that as we so-called as we, supposedly decrease the burning of fossil fuels, we actually accelerate the heating of the atmosphere, which then accelerates the ocean heating. 90% of the heat in the atmosphere goes into the ocean. And then there's already over, I think it's 500 zettajoules of heat is extra heat now stored in the oceans from global warming. And so those are the three main reasons that AI is wrong about abrupt global warming. So you have these new studies coming out saying AI is just as smart as humans, in many, if not most things. But actually AI is stupid because of the bias in human science, the corporate junk science that's corrupted the regulatory agencies, that supposedly, the supposed government science or public science is mainly funded by corporations now at universities because they get a 100% tax deduction when they control the scientific research, even at public universities. And I documented this when I was at University of Minnesota.